of Antonio AJ Armstrong Jr. is now in the hands of a jury. He is charged with the murders of his parents, Dawn and Antonio Armstrong Sr.
I want to thank the members of the jury who today convicted Antonio Armstrong Jr. of capital murder. Let me say this. We have seen this case tried by the defense in the media from 2020 to
AJ Armstrong Sr., a retired ex-NFL football player turned successful business owner, and his wife Dawn Armstrong raised what appeared to be the perfect Texas family, centered on football and faith. But on a fateful night in July 2016, everything changed when their 16-year-old son, AJ, called 911 and reported that he heard gunshots from his parents' bedroom.
Bellaire 911, where's your emergency?
I just heard 2 gunshots downstairs in my parents' room.
When the police arrived, they found the murder weapon hidden in plain sight, sitting beside a mysterious note that read, "I have been watching for a long time. Come get me." This video is based on the actual, now deleted, 2020 episode titled, "I Have Been Watching," that focused on AJ Armstrong's interpretation of the events that took place on July 29, 2016. Of course, I had to make adjustments and changes to this video because it's restricted and almost erased completely from the internet. In 2019, ABC correspondent Matt Gutman sat with AJ Armstrong and conducted an interview that took place at AJ Armstrong's lawyer's office, Rick DeToto. It was aired on January 6, 2023, but has since been removed, hiding AJ's truth about the night his parents were murdered. Until now. All information provided in this video is fact-driven and provided to you, the viewer, for you to formulate your own opinions. Myself, as your commentator, will attempt to remain completely unbiased by offering a fair assessment based on my research. Close your eyes and picture being 16 years old, attending the best private school, having money to burn, and an extremely supportive family. Suddenly, you realize they suspect you are the prime suspect. Police then discover the crime scene is something stranger and looks very amateur, like a 16-year-old did it. There was a pistol and a note with a message scribbled on it, and it said, "I have been watching for a long time." The Armstrongs were the perfect example of what Texas is. A God-fearing family consisting of a successful, hardworking husband, a beautiful, hands-on mother, 1 daughter, Kayra, and 2 sons, Joshua and Antonio Jr. They were a family of faith and football, and were well respected in their local Bellaire community of southeast Houston, Texas. But a family that appeared to be perfect had many skeletons in their closet that were about to be exposed. At approximately 1:40 a.m., the Houston Police Department dispatch received a phone call from a frantic 16-year-old AJ Armstrong, who stated that he's hiding in his bedroom closet because he heard gunshots coming from his parents' bedroom.
Houston 911, do you need medical, police, or fire?
Going to be police. Is Bellaire with a transfer? Palmetto. He's whispering, advising he just heard gunshots in his parents' room.
He's whispering while he's on the phone with dispatch because he feared the intruder may still be inside the home. He also showed great concern for his 12-year-old sister, Kayra, whose bedroom was located on the 2nd floor of the home near his parents' bedroom.
Your sister is downstairs? On the 1st floor? How old is she?
12.
Once the police arrived, Kayra and AJ rushed downstairs to the front door. AJ deactivated the home alarm system, opened his front door, and while holding his little sister's hands, they both emerged into complete chaos. AJ, being a protective older brother, told his little sister to stand behind him, just in case anything happened, because there were 7 police officers standing outside of their front door. And it was at that moment the Armstrongs' perfect life became an absolute nightmare, especially for 16-year-old AJ. Courtney Fisher, news anchor from KTRK, was one of the first reporters on the scene, and this is how she described what she was witnessing. There were maybe 7 police officers standing outside the front door. It's 3 a.m., police tape is already up. This just happened a couple of hours ago, so it's very busy here. You've got family members gathering at the scene outside of the home. The Armstrongs' eldest son Joshua just moved back to the area, and 3 weeks prior to the incident just moved into his own apartment less than a mile away from the Armstrongs' home with his new girlfriend. Prior to Josh moving into his own place, he lived with his parents and shared the 3rd floor loft with his little brother AJ. Now, rumor has it, Josh moved out of the family home due to a disagreement with his mother, Dawn, which we'll get into later. Also, there are rumors circulating that once Josh received the call from AJ, he immediately rushed to his parents' home with his cousin Trenton Teamer and his shotgun. However, in the video from the scene, Josh is seen holding a water bottle. Where's the shotgun? Also, it's not impossible to run with a shotgun in one hand and a bottle of water in the other, but let's be real, it's quite awkward. But who am I to judge? AJ also immediately called his father's sister, his aunt Olivia Specs.
And somebody was rolled out on a stretcher. They were saying that Antonio was being rushed to the hospital. Dawn had been shot in the head. What?
Once AJ and Kayra were safely out of the home, the police immediately began to investigate the premises, searching the home for any possible intruders and preserving any potential evidence. Houston Police Department claimed the doors in the home were all locked, and there didn't appear to be any signs of forced entry from the outside of the home. Dawn was pronounced dead at the scene, dying immediately from 2 point-blank gunshot wounds to her head. Antonio Sr. was shot once in the head and was still alive when paramedics arrived on the scene, but he was in critical condition, struggling to breathe as he laid in bed beside his wife. Both victims had pillows over their heads, as if the shooter didn't want to witness what they had just done. Friends and family of the Armstrongs who were early on the scene witnessed Antonio Sr. being rolled out of the home on a stretcher. He was rushed to Herman Memorial Hospital, where he was placed on a ventilator. Meanwhile, back on Palmetto Street at the scene of the crime, spectators began to gather and wondered, was this a murder-suicide? Houston Police Department officers on the scene bagged Kayra and AJ's hands in an effort to preserve any possible evidence, such as gunshot residue. It's allegedly protocol to bag everyone's hands who were at the scene of the crime. However, I personally never witnessed this while watching Law & Order, but who am I to judge? Both AJ and Kayra were placed in the back of separate patrol cars, but before AJ was placed inside, he was handcuffed, and not too long after, hauled off to the Houston Police Department headquarters, all alone. Where at the age of 16 and unfamiliar with the interrogation process, he would be interrogated by 2 experienced police detectives. After removing the victims and securing the home, the officers on the scene began to search for any possible evidence that could have been left by a home intruder. They observed the kitchen was the only area in the home that was disturbed, and it was ransacked. There were 3 kitchen drawers open, a pistol, and a scribbled note left by the intruder on the kitchen counter that read, "I have been watching for a long time." In the right-hand corner of the note, it said, "Come get me." The investigators also noticed a weird burn mark on the carpet in front of Dawn and Antonio's bedroom, which investigators found odd and decided to further investigate. Meanwhile, Kayra's grandmother was able to accompany the 12-year-old who remained shaken, confused, and scared by all the events that were taking place, as she sat alone in the back of a patrol car. Kayra said in her 2020 interview that she was crying uncontrollably, but not able to wipe her eyes because of the bags that were placed on her hands. Kayra would soon be released into her grandmother's care, while AJ was at police headquarters for further questioning. Allegedly, in less than 11 minutes of the police arriving on the scene, 16-year-old AJ was considered the prime suspect in the double homicide with no proof nor evidence. The waiting room at Herman Memorial was packed with friends and family, attempting to find out the latest on Antonio's condition. Meanwhile, a frightened 16-year-old AJ was about to make his second life-changing decision when he agreed to be interrogated by the police without legal counsel. Recently retired Detective Jimmy Dotson led the interview, and he was accompanied by lead detective Kenneth Dagnott, who later testified in AJ's third trial. Imagine Jimmy Dotson, with over 15 years of law enforcement experience, is questioning a 16-year-old with no knowledge of the law besides what he's probably seen on TV. Antonio Armstrong Sr. was born October 15, 1973, and was raised in Kashmere Gardens, located in a rough area in Houston, Texas, by a single mother by the name of Kay Spencer. She was 15 when she birthed him, and Antonio Sr. did not know his dad. But despite childhood struggles like growing up in an area that was filled with drugs and crime, Antonio beat all odds, graduating from high school and leaving the neighborhood with a football scholarship to Texas A&M. After graduating, Antonio entered the NFL draft in 1995 and was selected by the San Francisco 49ers in the 6th round. His football career extended to the Miami Dolphins, and he played Canadian football as well, until he was forced to retire due to injury. Once retired, Antonio Sr. became a successful business owner, owning 3 gyms located in the Houston area. But now, Antonio faced the ultimate battle, as he lay in a hospital bed relying on life support, fighting for his life. Antonio and Dawn met when Dawn visited his family church, and they had been together ever since. Dawn entered into the relationship with a son by the name of Joshua from a previous relationship. From day one, Antonio took care of Joshua as if he was his biological son. After the couple got married, they had 2 more children, Kayra and Antonio Donnell Armstrong Jr. Antonio's sister, Olivia, stated during her 2020 interview that Joshua discovered Antonio Sr. wasn't his birth father when he was around the age of 16. And I assume this must have been devastating to Joshua. And based on research, once Joshua discovered Antonio wasn't his birth father, he began to spiral out of control. Joshua was afforded the same privileges as his siblings AJ and Kayra, and also attended the prestigious high school of Kinkaid to better his education. However, he allegedly felt his parents showed favoritism to his siblings. Once Joshua graduated Kinkaid, he attended junior college by the name of Blen, located in Burnham. I don't know how to say that, Brenham, Texas. He eventually dropped out and moved back in with his parents and shared AJ's 3rd-floor loft. Let's take a moment and subscribe now, because there's so much more to unpack on Joshua that he's getting an entire episode dedicated just to him. And trust me, you do not want to miss it. It's been 5 hours since AJ made the 911 call, and he's now handcuffed in a Houston Police Department interrogation room, waiting to be questioned.
It's Friday, July 29th. By my watch, it is approximately 6:53 in the morning. The officers have brought you, Antonio, because they're going to question you in a short while regarding the murder of Dawn Armstrong. I'm going to go over your rights with you.
The magistrate asked AJ to repeat in his own words what she just said, making sure there's no misunderstanding, and AJ was fully aware of his next fatal step.
That you may remain silent and not make any statement at all. Any statement that you make may be used in evidence.
Antonio.
That if I don't want to say anything, I don't have to.
That's correct.
AJ then agreed to proceed with the questioning without legal counsel. For the full interrogation video, check out Reasonable Doubt, the AJ Armstrong Story playlist, episode 1. The interrogation. Asking AJ to provide a timeline of events that occurred the day before the 911 call.
So it was Friday. I didn't wake up, I don't know, until like 10, 11 o'clock. And I stayed in my room all day and just watched Netflix. My parents were like gone, like they were in and out of the house. My dad works from home a lot now, ever since he hurt his knee, so he's just been working at home a lot. And my mom's just in and out. She was mainly at our Bellaire gym like the whole day. And then she came back, and it was like she came back around 5, and it was me, my dad, and her. And then my mom and dad got dressed, and they went to one of my dad's friends' events that he had. So they were gone till like 8. And then when they got back, I went to go pick up my little sister from my grandmother's house, and we came back. We got back to the house at like 9 or 10, and then my little sister, I think she went straight to bed. My parents were laying in their bed. I don't know what they were doing, and I was just upstairs just watching Netflix still.
They then quizzed AJ about Antonio Sr.'s firearm.
When you look up, there's a bullet hole in the ceiling that comes from the loft, which is your bedroom.
Bullet hole in the ceiling?
It comes through the floor from the loft, from your room upstairs.
Yeah.
Where your room is?
The third floor.
Yeah.
There's a bullet hole in the ceiling?
There's a bullet hole in the study area that goes through, and you can see that it comes through because it pushes out in the study area.
I've never seen that.
They use a trajectory rod too.
Yeah, and they use the trajectory. They have the rod. They use a rod. They put it in there to see what the angle is.
Right.
And then on the floor, there's an actual bullet that was actually fired.
How long has that been there?
Well, that's why we're talking to you, because there's fresh sheetrock on the floor.
Right.
So, and that's kind of what we're getting at. There's things out there that we're trying to figure out how this has happened. You know, if there's 2 gunshots or 4 gunshots.
Right.
How do we have one that's coming from the room upstairs, and then we've got other ones in there?
I can explain the gun from the room upstairs. It was like...
During questioning, AJ tells detectives he's only touched his dad's gun once, when he was 8 years old, which was untrue. He later admitted he was playing with a gun with his friend a few weeks prior to the double homicide, causing a bullet to protrude through his bedroom floor into his dad's study. Later in the interview, AJ admitted blame for the suspicious burn mark on the hallway carpet in front of his parents' bedroom door.
Okay, so I know you guys saw the black little thing on the carpet when you walk upstairs. Yeah, I was like playing with matches and I dropped it. I dropped one and didn't realize it, and I just walked away. And then like the carpet set on fire, and then my dad came and confronted me about it, and I was like, I don't know, because I was like, it's stupid that I was playing with matches. I can't just admit. So I was like, I don't know, I had nothing to do with it. And like, I don't know, like my dad like took that personally. He was like, you like straight up like to my face. Like I told him the next day what actually happened, and he was like, you like straight up like to my face, just like lied to me, and like that like it hit home with my dad. But I mean like that day like we talked about it. Like we've been fine. Like me and my dad, whenever we do have problems, like we sit down and we talk about it and we solve it.
Yeah.
Like then.
But you.
Stating that he was playing with matches and accidentally dropped one. This incident took place Tuesday prior to his parents' double homicide on Thursday, early Friday. Throughout the interrogation, AJ stuck to his story and repeatedly told detectives he isn't responsible for the night's events, and once his dad is awake, he will confirm his story.
Maybe when my dad wakes up, just talk to him, because it has nothing to do with me.
Let me ask.
AJ ended the interview telling detectives the evidence test they conducted would also prove his innocence.
I've tried to like explain that I had nothing to do with this, and I guess I'm just gonna have to wait till like all the tests come back to prove that I had nothing to do with this.
But you knew something bad happened.
Yeah, but I had nothing to do with it.
Detectives are telling him we bagged your hand so we could run a gunshot and residue test. It's going to tell us if you fired the gun or not.
Immediately after the interview, AJ was charged as the prime suspect in the capital murder of his parents and was immediately booked into Houston Juvenile Detention Center.
Tonight, police are telling us Antonio and Dawn Armstrong were killed by their own 16-year-old son. They were found inside their Southwest Houston home early this morning. Dawn died at the scene. Antonio passed away several hours later.
This is the high schooler's life now. For 210 days, the Armstrong teen has woken up in a cell like this one.
I was taken to the Juvenile Detention Center downtown. For me being in there on a capital murder charge, that's scary.
How often were you allowed outside?
There was no outside.
You never saw the light of day.
We saw light through a window, but there was no going outside, fresh air. There was none of that.
And it is while he was detained that he received the horrendous news about his dad, Antonio Sr.'s death, from his lawyer, Rick DeToto.
I went to see him in juvenile detention.
What was that like?
Unbeknownst to me, I may have been the first person that told him that his dad passed.
That's when everything hit. It was real. They were gone.
Even though AJ was detained, he was granted permission to attend his parents' funeral.
Dawn Antonio alive! They just switched dwelling places. They're living in heaven now. They're rejoicing in the Lord.
Just staring, just looking at two caskets with the people that I love more than anybody, and knowing that I'll never get to have a conversation with them, I'll never get to see him.
There were thousands of people in attendance to pay their respect to the Armstrong family. The funeral was so huge that it couldn't be held at the family's church, where Antonio Sr. was the assistant pastor, with his mother Kay being first pastor. AJ entered the service with handcuffs, with a jacket covering his shackled hands, as he mourns the loss of his parents with fellow attendees. Immediately after the funeral, AJ was ushered back to Juvenile to mourn the loss of his parents in his cell alone.
And it's not easy. It's just not right. And to be accused just makes everything so much worse. It makes it so much harder for my family.
Now, while AJ was detained, there were multiple bizarre incidents taking place in the Armstrongs' businesses. There was a break-in at one of the gyms where the two assailants, who were never identified, took the Armstrong gym's family computer and the cash register before fleeing the scene. But why the computer? Was there information on there that could have freed AJ and pointed guilt at others, raising reasonable doubt? Houston police claimed they investigated the theft and it wasn't linked to the double homicide.
Antonio Armstrong Jr. blamed his parents' deaths on a mass intruder he claimed he saw in the house the night they were shot. His attorneys say new evidence that backs up that story was withheld by prosecutors for 18 months and handed over only 3 weeks ago.
She told the Houston Police Department in December of 2016 that there was death threats made against Antonio Armstrong Sr. She said that she had knowledge of him changing his life insurance policy based on these death threats.
Us were involved in something we didn't know about, and it was revenge or debts or whatever, but it further led me to believe that AJ was not involved in what happened.
That there was a prosecution wing that my husband Antonio and another individual were all involved in during this time. I'm nervous that the more I push or the more I share, that it can end up the way Antonio was. The names that I'm giving you, I know for a fact, based on the call records and based on what I've seen. So I don't know, is there a prostitution police? I don't know, what do you do? I know his son is obviously the suspect right now, but then that whole thing is just shady.
Do you think this is related to the homicide, or do you think it's just two independent things?
I think it's related.
Houston police talked to her and determined the allegations were unfounded, but defense attorney Rick DeToto says police can't produce notes or a report of their interviews with her.
State admitted that they'd been aware of the Maxine Adams interview, and it was, in fact, not turned over for 18 months.
Also, by now, the test results returned from the lab from the night of the incident, and surprisingly, none of the evidence pointed towards AJ. No fingerprints, no blood spatter, no gun residue.
I do remember hearing the DA tell us that if these results come back and they have no evidence, hey, I'll be free to drop the case, charges dismissed. That didn't happen.
AJ didn't have gunshot residue on his hands.
They didn't find any gloves with any evidence that he had worn a washer or a dryer. There's absolutely nothing that links him to any physical evidence in this case.
Again, oddly, Someone's fingerprints had to be on the gun, pen, notepad. Why didn't the Houston Police Department further investigate? But who am I to judge? It's now been 9 months into AJ being in juvenile detention. It's his junior year of high school, but instead of preparing for prom, AJ's preparing to be released from juvenile detention.
The Armstrong son's attorney says that they'll be in court at 9 o'clock this morning, and they have a plan ready for the judge as to why they believe that teenager should be released into his grandmother's care.
The state raised concerns about a bond.
Well, because of the magnitude of the charges against the defendant, that he's charged with a double homicide. And in these matters, the public safety comes into play.
He and his defense attorneys felt best that AJ be charged as an adult because he'd be eligible for bond and given more freedom until his trial date. At the age of 17, AJ was transferred to county jail, where he spent 23 hours of the day sedated and isolated from general population until he was able to see the judge. His legal team managed to be heard by the courts, and eventually AJ was bonded out on a bail of $200,000, which his family raised the money to pay. One of the stipulations to be released was he had to be on house arrest, and he would have to wear an ankle monitor.
I've been on house arrest for, today would make 1,603 days.
Once AJ bonded out, AJ remained on house arrest until 2 mistrials with hung juries, and his 3rd trial, where he was later found guilty of capital murder of both his parents.
All right, in cause number 154-6111, the state of Texas versus Antonio Armstrong Jr. We, the jury, find the defendant, Antonio Armstrong Jr., guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, when I call out your number, I'm going to ask you if this is your verdict, and you say yes it is, or no it is not, all right? Juror number 1, is this your verdict? Yes, ma'am. Juror number 2, is this your verdict? Yes, ma'am. Juror number 3, is this your verdict? Yes, it is. Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror number 5, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror number 6, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 7, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror number 8, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror number 9, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 10, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 11, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
And juror number 12, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
All right, so I confirm that is a unanimous verdict. Sir, having nothing to say, it is now the order of this court that you be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 40 calendar years. You'll be transported by the sheriff to that institution where you will serve out the remainder of life, and you'll get credit for all of your back time. Good luck to you, sir.
AJ was immediately sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 40 years. AJ's attorney, Rick DeToto, immediately filed an appeal on AJ's behalf after he was sentenced.
This is the trial one. This is obviously the decision you don't want to hear. How do you all feel right now?
It's absolutely devastating. AJ is grown up with us. As I said in my closing, over the last 7 years, we've seen him grow up from a 16-year-old to a young man, father, husband. It's devastating. But
The 23-year-old husband and now dad, AJ, can't afford legal counsel. So Judge Kelly Johnson appointed 2 public defenders to assist him with his appeal process. AJ's uncle, Harvey Armstrong, also a retired NFL player like his dad, Antonio Sr., has established a private donation fund and is calling on support from all, including all famous NFL friends, to generate funds to assist AJ in his appeal process. As of today, AJ supporters are still on his side and are attempting to raise outside donations to assist AJ with legal counsel for his appeal process.
there's a lot of people out there that think he's a pretty exceptional young man.
My first inclination was that there's no possible way. There's no way that AJ did this.
You couldn't ask for nicer. He treated Kate with such respect.
Everybody says, well, aren't you upset at AJ for doing this? Well, there was 3 lives that were destroyed that day, not just Antonio and Dawn, but AJ's life's never gonna be the same either.
It was
The most difficult thing was seeing him and having to leave him there. There were some visits he cried the whole visit.
Did anyone look at AJ through the whole trial and say, like, he couldn't be a killer? He didn't look like a killer. Like, was there any talk of that?
No, not
Okay.
outwardly, but I think we all may have thought it, you know, like, we don't want to believe it, but it's true. It's pretty obvious what the truth is here, so.
I have been retained by Antonio Armstrong because it appears evidence has been planted, probably by the Houston Police Department.
Joshua Armstrong is a name you've heard before in this case. Here's the picture investigators took of him at the crime scene. Josh is the eldest, and when his parents were shot, he wasn't there, according to the prosecution.
Josh is Josh, not much to really say about it. He does his thing. We don't see him much.
I don't know how Josh is really doing. I know they've been getting him medical help.